Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Beyond the Box podcast, where we jump into really interesting and fun conversations around at the intersection of real estate, technology, and capital. So today, I am extremely thrilled to have with us CEO and co-founder of Smart Alto, Mr. Hassan Riggs. Welcome, Hassan.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be having this conversation with you as well on the heels of NAR's 2021
Mhm.
annual Realtors Expo and Conference,
Yeah.
and it was so great to be on site with people again, meeting friends from the past, meeting new friends, and really just getting back out there live and in person because it's really there's nothing like it to be
Yeah.
live and in person. So I got to meet you, not for the first time, but you and I got to hang
Yeah.
out a little bit at
Yeah.
annual. So that was very cool.
Yeah, we did. One of the things that is it was really fun for me is not only being able to see the team, but being able to see some of the industry leaders. Because the reality is when you're running a company, it can be a very isolating thing. It can be, your operator, you're thinking, you're spending time to yourself, you're trying to grow the business, you're thinking about product, you're talking to your team, and now everything is remote, right? So it took an isolating role and made it even more isolating. And so, kind of being in front of everyone and having an opportunity to shake hands, kiss babies, and it was great. I loved it.
Amazing, amazing. So on that note, Hassan, tell us about the fabulous entity that you are the CEO of. Tell us a little bit about Smart Auto and what you guys are out there doing.
Yeah, so great. So Smart Alto, we have real estate inside sales agents that ultimately help realtors, team leaders, brokers triple their productivity, execute all of their digital selling tasks, and book more meetings so that they can close 5+ additional deals per year without cold calling. And so practically what that means is that our inside sales agents qualify, filter, and set 15-minute phone appointments with real estate leads 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And the reason that's important is because the top agents, teams, brokers, they don't have time to follow up with leads. They don't have time to consistently follow up with leads. And so they ultimately end up missing out on quality sales opportunities. And our brand promise, if you would say our purpose, is to ensure that agents, they never miss another quality sales opportunity again. They have the opportunity to capture the value out of the business, out of the marketplace, grow their business, and ultimately make more money. Yeah.
Love
So
it. I love it. And so tell me a little bit about the genesis of Smart Alto. Well, let's back up. Tell us a
yeah,
little bit
yeah,
about you and what your experience is, and then the genesis of Smart Alto and how you
sure,
found yourself here today.
sure. So, I grew up in Birmingham, Alabama, went to the University of Alabama, so roll tide.
Roll
And,
Tide.
my mom was my, really my entire family. They were either, in medicine, so, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, et cetera, or in service. So teachers, police officers, firemen, et cetera. And I'm the one person who kind of went down the business route.
All right.
Yeah, and so when I was young, I used to go door to door selling Cutco knives. So quite literally, go walking through the neighborhood, knocking on doors, sitting across the kitchen table from mom and dad, selling $3,000 knives. And so I've always had that entrepreneurial bug, that entrepreneurial spark. And when I was in college, one of the things that I did, I had a couple of businesses. One business is I own some vending machines. So I purchased some, those little quarter vending
Yeah.
machines. I put three of them in a couple of YMCAs around Birmingham, Alabama. And every single week I would drive from Tuscaloosa back to Birmingham, clean the vending machines, go to Sam's, fill it up with new candy, and take all of my little quarters back with me down to Tuscaloosa. So I did that for a couple of years. I also had a marketing and promotions company. But one of the things that I did is I was a real estate inside sales agent for a local brokerage. And so I have made tens of thousands of telephone calls. I have text hundreds of folks. I've followed up with leads. I've set appointments for real estate agents. I've gotten firsthand experience of the problem that really good, high producing team leaders and brokers face when they're trying to grow their business. Okay, I think they're independent contractors. They oftentimes don't have a bunch of support. They go to real estate school, which teaches them about real estate and how to do transactions, but doesn't teach them how to grow a business. It doesn't teach them about marketing, about sales, about how to scale, about cash conversion cycles, about how to manage their finances and budget. It doesn't teach them all of those things. And so you can have someone who's really good at real estate and a genuine person who may be able to help a new home buyer, a new home seller more than anyone else in the market. But if they can't follow up with that lead, start a conversation, and show their unique value, nothing else matters. The purpose of marketing and sales is to move people through deeper phases of the customer relationship. And when a top producing agent, they're so constrained with their time reviewing contracts, showing homes, going on listing appointments, they just don't have the time to talk to someone who may or may not work with them in the future. And that's where a real estate inside sales agent becomes so important. So I knew that was a problem there. Fast forward years, I set off to solve that problem and created Smart Alto.
So tell me a little bit about that journey. So, yeah. I mean, that's fabulous. And I think, so many of the solutions that you see, well, really, that's really what innovation is about, right? Is somebody experiences some type of a pain point in, and something that they have gone through or something that a friend or a family member has experienced. They see a need and they set out to solve it. So talk to me a little bit about that journey that you went through from your inside sales job at a real estate brokerage to, deciding that would be a good idea for you to start your own company to do this.
Yes, I was always, always entrepreneurial. When I left college, I had a couple of opportunities. So two opportunities were in outside sales. And one was actually a school teacher. It's a company called Teach for America that is really popular in the States. And so I did not take that school teacher job, which is going to put me in Memphis, Tennessee. Great opportunity, but didn't take that. Instead, I went down to Miami.
Okay. Well, I would have done the same thing.
So I went down to Miami and I spent I already had some customer facing skills, but I do think it's important, especially earlier in your career, to get customer facing skills, because oftentimes people get hired for their analytical ability, but people get promoted and they advance for their people skills. My mom told me when I was young, she said, IQ gets you good grades, EQ will make you wealthy. And so you want to have that EQ, you want to have the emotional intelligence. So one of the best ways to get that is by working with people and getting that customer facing experience. And so I had that early on, invested a bunch of time, energy, effort into my sales training, which I already had some experience doing that, but my time in outside sales just bolstered that. And then I went back to graduate school and then I got in on the marketing side. So I've spent my career on the commercial side of the business. So doing analysis, understanding opportunities. And so I've always thought about how a lot of people in the startup world, they think about product market fit. I always think about market product fit. And so it's not just a change of words. It's really not just switching the words around. It's really a different approach to the business.
Totally different mindset.
Different mindset where you first start off understanding the market, understanding their needs, wants, and expectations, understanding the problems they have and their motivations for solving those problems, who you're targeting, and then you think about the solution that actually solves those problems, because the purpose of technology is to bring people and ultimately help them solve their problems. So if you have a great technology, but it doesn't actually solve a problem that people have and they're willing to pay for, then it's all for naught, right? So I started with the market. That's what helped.
Amazing. So I have like about 4 different threads that I want to kind of pull on this conversation, because I mean, this is the downside of getting to know you a little bit. There's so much to Hassan Riggs that you can kind of go down any one of these paths. But let's just, I want to stay here for a second, and then I want to circle back to your comment. your mom's comment
Yeah.
around IQ versus EQ, actually,
Yeah.
because I think that's also a really fabulous sort of conversation to explore. But let's continue on the thread of, sort of how you started Smart Alto. What are the key sort of trends or
Yeah.
experiences that the market might be going through or was going through sort of at the beginning and you've seen evolve that really sort of defined this problem that you're out there seeking to address?
Sure. So one of the big trends is that think about what happened in the world in 2008, 2009. Everyone went from kind of their normal, regular, everyday life to having one of these in their hands.
Yeah.
And so when the cell phone came around, specifically the iPhone put all these apps, it put the world at your fingertips, right?
Yeah.
What happened is it became a new channel, and channels can build, like products are built to fit channels, right? And so when you
Right.
have this new channel, it changed the way the world operates. And so that's why so many big companies kind of sprung up around that time. But also what it did is it forced everyone into this always on, information available 24/7 on demand world, where now people don't just want their Uber in 5 minutes, they want it to show up instantly. They don't want Amazon next day, they want Amazon Prime now, right? So you kind of go into this world of always on, instant, right now. And then the people, the home buyers, the home sellers, the agents are dealing with every single day are operating, they're living in that world. So when someone goes to Facebook, Zillow, Realtor.com, Homes.com, and they say, hey, you know what? I want to see that house. I want to talk to an agent to see that house. Their expectation is that someone responds to them immediately. Why not? That's what happens in every other part of their world. When they say something, they get it now. But in the real estate world, that wasn't happening. In fact, people, their expectation when they reached out to an agent was that they would get a response within 5 minutes, a personalized response. But the experience was that over 50% of real estate leads were not followed up with at all. And the ones who were followed up with, when an agent finally did get back, it was 2 days later.
Right.
Now that person, that home buyer, that home seller has moved on. They've
That's
moved
right.
on to the next agent. And the reason that's important is not just because it's a missed opportunity there from working with a new lead, but 70% of home buyers work with the very first agent they meet when it's time to buy or sell a house. So think about that for a second. 70% of people don't shop around. They work with the very first agent they meet when they're ready to transact. So there's a lot of value in setting that first appointment. There's a lot of equity in setting that first appointment. There's a lot of margin in setting that first appointment. There's a lot of money in setting that first appointment.
Absolutely.
And so that's what we do for folks. We ultimately set that first appointment so that the agent can be the first and the last agent that home buyer or seller talks to.
Love it. So how do you thread that needle, Hassan? So how do you convey those, your solution to the 70% or the 30%, I guess, of people that don't follow up on those leads, I guess, however you want to look at that stat you just threw out there. But how do you align your company and what Smart Alto brings to the marketplace to ensure that that equity isn't left on the table, but how are you building that brand awareness that allows the practitioner to see that you're there to help them solve that problem?
Yeah, so it's a couple of things that we do. So one is, as you know, I just spoke at the National Association of Realtors conference. And so over the past couple of years, because I've had so much training in, I used to be a real estate inside sales agent. I've done outside sales, not only, when I was a teenager, but also as an adult. And I've sold millions and millions of dollars in products and services, both online and face-to-face. And so when I speak with people, I have a certain level of authority on the topic because I've done it. And I think that matters
Been there,
a lot.
done that. Totally.
Yeah, I've been there, done that. And it's not just that I've done it, but I also take my time to study this space. And so there's a difference between, like, there's a speed and trust. And Robert Cialdini talks about the 6 most powerful ways to influence folks. And he talks about, authority being one of them. And authority is a really important part of kind of our process and our sales presentations. And that's one of the reasons each year I go back and speak at the National Association of Realtors Conference, because I want to stand on stage and I want to lead with value. And we don't take a very sales heavy approach, but we say, in order to be successful, you've got to, what are the habits that consistently produce success that you're doing every single day? And we share with people what those habits should be. But we also know that in practice, they don't have the time to consistently do
Exactly.
that. And so one of the things, the shifts that we help them make is, where should you use your most valuable resource, which is time? Because the reality is, my dad told me this when I was young. He said, the most important part of productivity is figuring out what to focus on, because it doesn't matter how fast you run if you're running in the wrong direction. And agents need help figuring out what to focus on, because what they want to do is focus their time, energy, effort on the highest revenue producing activities possible, working with clients. And that's what they should be doing. They should not be spending their time following up with every Tom, Dick, and Harry who may or may not want to work with them. And so you leave that $10, $12 per hour job over to us, you outsource it, and you spend your time focusing on the $10,000 per hour job. And that's the way we kind of frame it from an educational perspective, coming from a place of authority.
I really like that, Hassan. And so this is now the thread that I want to follow on with you, because the other side of what you kind of do personally, right, is you've created a bit of a presence, which is really all about, and this is me articulating this based on what I've seen and how I've experienced it. It's less about Smart Alto and your solution. It's really about Hassan sharing all of this wealth of knowledge that you've curated through your experiences, but your vast interest in your own personal development, your own professional development around productivity and success, and just frankly becoming a better human. Because really, isn't that what it's all about? Is how do we just become a better human, and build things that help others rise above, right? Build things and support others in ways where I have a strength I can lend to you that supports your strength. And so, your presentation at NAR Annual last week was an example of that, where it wasn't a pitch for your company. It was more around, how do I share and establish myself as an authority and establish some credibility? But it's also about sharing, kind of that learning. So tell me a little bit more about sort of how you have done that in your career and how you continue to do that.
Yeah, so great insight, great point. One of the things that I learned when I was around 25 years old is that the way I get value and fulfillment out of life is through growth and contribution. So if I'm not growing, learning, evolving, expanding, and then contributing in some meaningful way, I feel empty inside. And so I always have to do that. It's just one of the ways that I'm wired. And I do believe that we all have human needs. And those are two of my core human needs. I've got to learn, I've got to grow. I'm attracted to intellectually curious people. I'm attracted to people who are kind of walking in the same general direction as me when it comes to just this moxie, this gusto towards this drive towards getting and learning more, but then also sharing that. And so I approach life from that perspective. And then when you combine that with EQs greater than IQ, people don't want to be sold, but everyone wants to be helped. And so if I can go out and have this wonderful adventure and learn through this adventure and make some dumb mistakes, but then level up because of that, and then turn around and share what I've learned with others, there's a lot of value and equity in that. And I think, again, there's speed and trust. And when you're vulnerable with people and you don't just talk about the wins, but you also talk about the failures, the losses, the learnings, I think people can really resonate with that. Because as much as Instagram wants to make you think that people never have bad days and they never wake up someday and say, man, this really sucks, that's not true. sometimes life sucks, right? And sometimes we all make mistakes. And if you can kind of hone in and channel that and learn from it and learn that the obstacle is the way. The
That's right.
obstacle is the way. There's a lot of value in the obstacles that you face. And when you learn from it and level up from it, grow and then contribute, there's a ton of respect there that I think you've earned and that you get from it. And so that's just like a general philosophy that I have on life that I try to lean into pretty heavily.
Yeah, I think that's why I really appreciate hanging out with you so much, Hassan, because two things you say really resonate strongly with me is, you know, the obstacle is the way. I always say you run toward the fear, right? You run toward the thing that you're most afraid of, because that's where you're going to push your edges out. It's where you're going to learn. It's where you're going to grow. And often, overcoming the fear is the way that you become better as a person, as an entrepreneur, as a family member, as a friend, as a member of society. I think that exists everywhere. I think the other component is, we're in this space and this podcast is focused on real estate, technology, and capital, right? And if I think about all three of those things, and why I'm so excited about what we get to do and people like you that we get to work with, is it really is all about creating value. And the more value you can create, and the more contribution you provide, you will continue to be valuable and be rewarded for it, right? And I think that's what I love so much about kind of your mission-driven approach, your heart-driven approach to building your company and servicing your clientele, is really the fact that you are adding and contributing that value to their lives on an everyday basis. So kudos to you. I love that approach.
Yeah.
So on that note, on the heels of NAR annual, so we're recording this in the middle of November 2021, probably to be aired sometime in the new year of 2022. Coming out of that event, what are you kind of most optimistic about, either for the industry or for your company, and your enterprise?
Yeah. So from a industry perspective, wow, the world is opening up again.
Right.
And it's
Isn't
great
it's fun.
it's fun and it's great to see people in person. It's great to be able to safely leave your house and see other people who are just doing commerce. Joe Polish says nothing in the world happens until something is sold, right?
Yeah,
And so
true.
we need people out there selling things, and we need people out there buying things. And so it's great to be able to do that more, I think, in person, and just connect with folks in person, because there is we are social creatures, and having that face-to-face interaction is an important part of life. It's not the only thing, but it's definitely an important part of life. So I'm really excited about that. From a company perspective, the world is leaning in our direction. So, right now we follow up with real estate leads, and we do it primarily through text message. So we use SMS to do it. And we've always known that SMS is the most preferred channel, because through home buyers and sellers, it's the most preferred channels, how people communicate with their friends and family members and etc. all day long. And so why don't businesses do more of that? Why don't real estate agents do more of that? And so what recently happened, though, is this went up to the Supreme Court in the States, a landmark case called Facebook v. Duguid. V. Duguid, where basically the long and short of it is now SMS is, per the Supreme Court, also likely the safest channel to reach out to contacts, safer than making telephone calls through these big boiler rooms.
From a security point of view, and from
a compliance perspective, right?
Got it.
And safer than sending voicemail drops, from the sense that the way that the Supreme Court defined automatic telephone dialing systems was broad previously, and now it's more narrowed without getting into too much of the details. And that narrowing of the definition leans more towards texting, leans more towards SMS. And it's not saying that emails and voicemail drops or telephone calls are no longer a part of real estate. No, it's not saying that at all. But it is saying that from a litigation perspective, from a primary way to reach out to home buyers and home sellers, texting is the way. And so that's a really big win for Smart Alto, and I'm excited about that.
Very cool. I learned something today.
Yeah.
So Facebook v. Duguid. I'm going to check it out. All right.
Sure.
I think that is, a really good message to the industry where, there's always a concern, and it probably more so in Canada than the US. Canadian law is very hypersensitive to privacy and privacy legislation. And I think we're going to see, as technology continues to evolve, we're going to see more of these sort of landmark decisions being made on both sides of the border, which I think will have implications in terms of how the industry continues to evolve. So very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. So Hassan, just rounding this out today, sure. I always learn so much when I'm chatting with you, but I'm curious, from where you sit, what are sort of 3 things in the industry that you're keeping your eye on?
Yeah.
Could be positive and really impactful, could be kind of cautious, just anything that you think is important to share with folks in terms of how you see the industry evolving.
So one thing is, a couple of days ago, I was on a Zoom call with Alfred Lin, and he's one of a few people who sit on the board of Airbnb.
Okay.
And long story short, one of the things that's interesting about Airbnb is that more people are likely going to start using Airbnb for their secondary homes, maybe even their primary homes, basements, etc. And I think the quote was that it could take up to 10 to 20% more inventory off the market. So the market may tighten up just a bit again, even more so.
More than it is
now. If you think it's tight now, it could get even tighter when they think about the footprint that Airbnb could have kind of moving into the new year, which I thought was pretty interesting, because if someone has a second home and then maybe they're thinking about selling it, maybe they don't. Maybe they say, let me just, I could rent it out, but yeah, maybe I could put it on Airbnb. A second thing is just, and maybe this is top of mind because it's happening with quite literally 4 of my friends right now who are in different cities around the state. So DC, San Francisco, Dallas, Miami, people who own homes are looking at building ADUs in their backyard.
So an ADU, define it. I know what it is, but
yeah. So one of the things that auxiliary dwelling unit is where people can build these tiny homes and put it in their backyard to rent those out. And people used to call them like mother-in-law suites, but I don't think they're going to rent it out to the mother-in-law. What they'll do is they'll rent it off. They'll rent it out to the young professional who may be in their market. And one of the things that's happening all around the country is happening in DC right now. In these areas where inventory is so tight, think San Francisco, think parts of New York, think Washington, DC, where the inventory is tight. The ordinances in those areas are changing to make it easier to build these auxiliary dwelling units in your backyard so that can have more inventory in that space. And now you can rent that out on Airbnb, or you can rent it out to someone who's, a young professional who's in the market. And so I challenge real estate agents, teams, brokers, people who are producing to understand and know the local laws and ordinances in your area. And if you can think about being very specific and niching down and not trying to serve everyone, but trying to serve a very specific segment of the market and adding that to your repertoire, you can position yourself against, Zillow, for example, right? Everyone's talking about how Zillow is trying to disrupt everything. Well, I think that can be a really good sweet spot for folks.
Yeah, and if I can, and I don't know I asked you for 3, but if I can just jump in there, even from a
Sure.
Canadian perspective, so I've had the opportunity to participate in a funding round that the federal government proposed for affordable housing. And so the funding round was really around, the first round that I participated in was focused on data-driven solutions. And interestingly, out of the 20, I think we had 21 solutions that we evaluated ultimately for the funding to receive funding. There were 5 of them that were focused on ADUs as some aspect of ADUs as one of those really targeted niches, as you say, that would address affordability and affordable housing, because it does come back to instances of squeezed inventory and accessibility to homes. But to your point, there's a lot of archaic legislation out there and regulation that that doesn't support. And so I couldn't agree more, Hassan, that I think that we're going to see more of this type of an approach to the marketplace to increase inventory, address some of those social impacts like affordability and accessibility. And so love that's on your radar as well.
Yeah, I just think it's an important point for people to kind of keep their eyes, ears open.
Totally.
My dad used to always say, stop, look, and listen, right? So stop, look, listen, and just pay attention and understand the local laws and ordinances. Go down to, I think every Saturday in Arlington County, once a month in Arlington County, they'll have, they have meetings and they talk about these, they talk about these types of things. So it's just important to keep your pulse.
Agreed. Stay tuned. Be aware of what's happening.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Anything else? Anything else we should keep our eye on from Hassan, or anything else that we haven't covered today that you want to make certain our listeners and our viewers know about you, know about Smart Alto?
Well, if you're interested in Smart Alto, then you can go to www.smartalto.com.
Love it. Perfect.
And I would love, someone on my team would definitely reach out to you and help you get started and learn more about it. And one thing I'll just maybe leave to share is it's a relationship-driven business. Relationships are important, and it's the primary way you get fulfillment out of life. So continue to develop them, continue to understand what they actually mean, and it's a give and take, right? It's a give and take, and I think if you can give first, then you truly do. You truly do add to someone's emotional bank account, and in the end, that's what's going to make you wealthy in life, and obviously be good for your bank account too. So,
love it. Couldn't agree more. Where do people find you if they want to hear more of these like high charge tips and pieces of intel from Hassan Riggs?
Yeah, so a couple of places. I'm on LinkedIn, so you can just search Hassan Riggs on LinkedIn. That's HASSANRIGGS. I also run a Facebook group. It's called the Real Estate Marketing Mastermind Facebook group. It has 9,000 realtors in there, and every other week I do a Facebook Live on different topics concerning industry trends, following up with leads, lead generation, lead conversion, all those types of things. And so something I'm passionate about. I love to help and give back. And so fortunately I get to do that and get paid to do it, So it's great. Best of both worlds.
Awesome. Yeah. All right. So Instagram, Facebook, you'll find Hassan there, smartalto.com if you want to learn more about the solution. Sure. Thank you so much, Hassan. Have really, really enjoyed the conversation today. Appreciate you and all that you're doing. And just the ray of light that you bring to those around you. So thank you.
No, thank you. I appreciate the time. It's been great.
All right. Thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.